Alright, let's talk about One Piece spoilers. This has been a bit of a hot topic on the internet due to recent chapters, and as a result, just warning, this video may contain some One Piece spoilers. I don't know, haven't made it yet. But a lot of people, particularly on the Reddit, have gotten very upset with YouTubers using spoilers in their titles and thumbnails. So let's try and dissect this grand mess. And we're going to start with a question. This question: what is a spoiler? Because in all of the Reddit comments I read, nobody could quite agree on what constitutes a spoiler. And that's because spoilers in regards to One Piece have evolved into a very, unfortunately, unique problem. Where do we draw the line with what is and isn't a spoiler? Well, I mean, One Piece is a series that has been published weekly for a quarter of a century now, and therefore everything is going to be a spoiler to someone. For example, the death of Ace. That happened 12 years ago now, but it takes someone reading almost 600 chapters or watching almost 500 episodes to get to that event in the series. Even showing or talking about Gear 4th is a massive spoiler to many due to how late it happens. In fact, Gears in general, think about this, Luffy doesn't even use Gear 2nd until almost 300 episodes into the series. Now, there is the option of saying so long as it's been animated, it's not a spoiler, and that's what I used to go with. Because that's true, but let's just examine that system. At this stage, the anime is almost a year and a half behind the manga. And as manga readers know, a lot has happened in that year and a half. So much so that it's completely revolutionized and retrospectively changed how we look at One Piece as a whole. So if we go by the it has to be animated rule, then currently we can't really sell a video based on anything beyond chapter 998, which I personally find ridiculous. It gets worse though, because let's take anime watchers out of the equation. There's even a disconnect with spoilers between manga readers. Because let's talk about people who read the official translation. You might not think there's a lot of them, but there are. I recently did a poll on Grand Line Review, which was taken by just over 90,000 people, and I asked them how they consume the One Piece manga. And 11% of all respondents said that they read the official only. Now 11%, doesn't sound like a big number, but for example, on Grand Line Review, we had 2.4 million unique viewers in the last 28 days. So we'd be talking a potential of 240,000 people who read just the official translation. That is, of course, a pretty bad estimate, because there are people who watch my channel who are anime only, or people who watch that don't watch or even read One Piece at all. It's strange, but they do. But let's be conservative, let's cut the number in half. We're still talking about over 100,000 official-only readers. And that's just me. I do not represent the greater fan base as a whole. But I take the time to point that out because there's a general consensus online that once the scans are released, usually 2 to 3 days before the official, then spoilers are pretty fair game to post. Places like the One Piece subreddit might have its rules and moderation. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and the rest of the internet, they do not. Nowhere is safe. And so to bring this back to the main issue, we do not have a unified definition of what is and isn't a spoiler, because everything is a spoiler to someone. If you talk about the written leaks, then it's a spoiler to scan readers. If you talk about the scans, it's a spoiler to official readers. If you talk about the official manga release, then it's a spoiler for up-to-date anime watchers. And if you talk about the up-to-date anime, then it's a spoiler for anime watchers and manga readers who are currently catching up. I couldn't even count how many layers of potential spoilering there was there, but it's impossible. A unified definition of what is and isn't a spoiler is not something we can get behind, like, say, Avengers Endgame, because back in that situation, there was one very clear definition of what spoilers were. Either you've seen the film or you haven't. It's very simple, and One Piece is not simple, because you have so many different methods of consuming it, and every person is going to have their own unique line of what is and isn't a spoiler depending on their consumption. Now, to bring this back to the thing it is that I do. As a YouTuber, this makes things very painful because it is impossible to cater for everyone. So no matter what I do, someone is always and has always accused me of spoiling them, or spoiling others. Actually, that's much more common, and let's address that. The overwhelming amount of comments that I get with accusations of spoiling tend to come from manga readers who are concerned for the well-being of anime watchers, which is nice and noble and stuff, but they really don't need you to white knight them, and here's why. More often than not, the reason why manga readers think something is a spoiler is because they understand the context of the situation. So let's take a look at these 3 thumbnails I've done as a result. We have videos implying that Zoro is dead, Luffy is a giant, and Frankie is Bluton. One of these videos got quite a few comments from manga readers shocked and aghast that I would dare spoil in the thumbnail, and the other 2 didn't. Which is interesting because when we put our anime-only watcher glasses on, anime watchers don't have the context behind what these thumbnails are referring to, and therefore have no idea which video contains a spoiler and which of the two are comical exaggerations. For all they know, all three of these videos are pure speculative theories. Or from the other much worse angle, perhaps they believe that all three of them are blatant spoilers. But the point is, they don't know. To manga readers, yes, it is beyond obvious where the spoiler is, but that's because you have the benefit of context, resulting in the ironic thought of, it's only a spoiler if you already know what the spoiler is, and therefore it is not a spoiler. Another example of this effect is anime openings. Whenever a new anime opening for One Piece comes out, it is met with a tsunami of complaints from manga readers concerned for anime watchers. Because to be fair, the anime openings do tend to spoil a lot of major events for pretty much the next entire year of the series, and I personally used to get quite upset on behalf of anime watchers, because from my perspective, they weren't even safe from spoilers watching the anime week to week. But when I made a couple of videos on the topic, the overwhelming feedback I received from anime watchers was that they didn't even notice. Something that looks like the most shocking spoiler in the world to us generally goes completely over their heads because they have no context. And that's when I made a conscious decision to stop getting upset on behalf of people who were never actually upset to begin with. And I think that's what quite a few manga readers of One Piece have yet to realize. But here's why I've decided to do the thing it is that I'm doing. Because our online community has no clear line on what a spoiler is, I've chosen my own. And that line is, if it's been officially published in the manga, then it's fair game. And the reason why I've come to that conclusion is far from an arbitrary choice. It's because as time goes on, I've learned that this is overwhelmingly what you as viewers want. Putting what some may consider to be spoilers in thumbnails is rewarded at a shockingly high rate, and not using them can feel almost like being punished by you guys. And this is where you might get the argument of, you're doing this for greed, you money man. Selling out your audience for more views. But then you ask, where are those views coming from? They're coming from people, because it's not some kind of machine. Those views are coming from people. Individual people who are making an active choice to click what interests them the most. And what objectively interests this online fandom most are what many people would call spoilers. Because referencing material from recent chapters and thumbnails turns those videos into rather hot topics. It makes them look fresh and urgent and new. Whereas if you stick to using older materials in a much more vague way, then it makes the videos look stale, trivial, and old. And you might also say that, there's a line you can draw. Perhaps you can find some way to make your videos look fresh and fun without actually spoiling them somehow. And there is, but it's very limiting, because you have to be as vague as possible. And as it turns out, it's very hard to be both vague and excited, because there are only so many words that the English language has on offer. So that's why I've often used titles like Oda dropped a bombshell, or Zoro just broke One Piece, or Luffy just broke One Piece, or everyone just broke One Piece, that it happens a lot, or stuff like this has changed that character forever. I use those generic and vague titles because it's an attempt to still say something fresh and relevant whilst actually saying nothing of substance at all. Which is a really difficult exercise. Try it. Go ahead and make a title on some sort of exciting specific event without referencing that event at all, but it still needs to be exciting. But really, and this is kind of the really shit thing, I get more complaints about those vague titles than I do if I just put in a blatant spoiler. People actually get really frustrated at just how vague they are, typing massive essays in the comments section about how they felt clickbaited because they thought the video was going to be something else, which I guess is fair because the title was vague enough not to give anything away. And therefore it really is up to the subjective interpretation of the person clicking it. So that's the danger of not being specific. And then because there are only so many of these kind of titles that you can make, I also get accused of running out of ideas, having no creativity, milking the algorithm, etc. In fact, the only time I don't get any complaints at all is if I just title the video something like One Piece Chapter 1044 Review, full stop. And the reason why I don't get any complaints is because nobody watches those kind of videos, because it doesn't have an exciting enough title, especially if it's accompanied by a super vague thumbnail as well, because there's no value proposition there. Someone looking at that kind of title and thumbnail doesn't know what they're getting, so they don't click it, they click something else where they know what they're getting. So I'm pretty screwed no matter what I do, and therefore I've decided to go down the path that the majority of you seem to want, which is by putting very recent material in thumbnails and titles. And honestly, apart from the occasional spoiler accusation comment, this has had no negative effects whatsoever. Take this video review of chapter 1044 before titled Luffy's Final Form, even showing a close-up of him using Gear 5th. Now, even though this was released after the official chapter came out, there were still quite a few spoiler complaints. However, if we go to the like to dislike ratio, we're still sitting at a whopping 98.3%, which is about average for me, which means that of the roughly 460,000 unique viewers, I managed to satisfy or at least keep neutral about 450,000 of them. Less than 10,000 disapproved, and there may be other reasons for that aren't spoiler related at all. Maybe they just thought the video sucked, and maybe they hate my face. Some people do that. In fact, quite a few people do that. On the flip side, I should say that some people may have also liked the video despite the spoilery thumbnail. But still, if that is the case, then I don't see it as a problem because those people got over that and still enjoyed the video. But this is the kind of feedback that we base our decision making on, which some people may say, no, you should be basing your actions on people, not numbers. But these numbers represent the consensus of people. And I study them because I want to know how to better provide for this community. But I think it is also worth asking, why is this community the way it is? What is with our addiction to spoilers? How has this become so powerful? Well, let's examine release schedules. The official chapter comes out at about 1 a.m. on a Monday morning for me, and that's great. New One Piece. We all get to talk about it. Hurrah! But that lasts maybe a day at most, because then on Tuesday, new spoilers are leaked. It's usually a couple of lines, a chapter title, nothing major, but still that becomes all anyone wants to talk about. Then on Wednesday, it gets even worse because you get more detailed spoilers, like we're talking entire sentences this time. So all anyone wants to talk about on Wednesday are those added spoilers. Then on Thursday, actual pages of the manga are being leaked online. In fact, sometimes we have images of the entire chapter by Thursday. So on Thursday, that's all anyone wants to talk about. Then on Friday, the scanlations are released online, so that's all anyone wants to talk about on Friday, as well as Saturday and Sunday, because it is fresh, hot content. And then Monday finally rolls around, the official release comes out, and well, almost nobody cares, because a shocking amount of this fan base have already spent the last 6 days talking about the chapter already, and by Monday, when it officially comes out, honestly, they're kind of over it, and it becomes more about waiting for the next set of spoilers to drop shortly on Tuesday. And just stop and think about that. 6 out of 7 days, each and every week, is spent hyper-focused on spoilers and leaks. Unless there's a break week, in which case we focus on destroying one another. But if you're someone who doesn't like spoilers, leaks, or scans, then you're probably spending 6 of those 7 days just disconnected from the online community, trying to avoid them. So if you've ever wondered why YouTubers might feel the pressure to talk about spoilers and scans and even include them in thumbnails, this is why. Because spoiler culture is the dominant culture of the online One Piece fanbase. I mean, the One Piece subreddit even proudly boasts membership of 1 million spoiler addicts. That is how this fanbase has chosen to label themselves. And in the end, we make what you want to watch. Remember that behind every view number is a living, breathing person who has made a decision to click and watch that video. I think a lot of people try to dismiss YouTubers as doing stuff like chasing views, as if they're some kind of intangible mechanical thing. But what we're actually doing is chasing people. We are competing for your entertainment. And as viewers, you actually have significantly more power than we do as creators. Every time a new video comes out, you as a collective get to vote. You get to vote with your view as to whether or not you want to see more of that kind of content. And if people who use spoilers are getting the most votes, then that says a lot more about the community's desires than it does the YouTubers using spoilers, in my opinion. But now for something we can all agree on, here is my dog. Hey Pucky, would you like to go for a walk? I think we would, yes.